Hi, I'm Molly Fish.
And I'm Jamie Anderson.
And this is Book Pop.
Do you like my new shoes?
Yes. Actually, I was going to say something and I was like, oh, I hope she hasn't been wearing them like every day. And I just noticed them.
No, I
They're
got them.
so cute.
When did I get them? Saturday. I went shopping with my mom.
Wow. How was that?
It was good. My niece came with.
Nice.
We went out to lunch at Chick-fil-A. She was really excited about it.
Where'd you go shopping?
We did Marshall's. And then I got these at DSW. My mom had a $30 gift card.
Excellent.
Coupon. So they were only like $35.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Are they like real leather?
I think so. They're kids. They were $69 or something like that. And I was like, I wish these were cheaper. And then my mom whips out a coupon. I was like,
oh, Mom.
Yeah.
I also used my coupon to buy my mom dinner this weekend because I had a food fight. Okay, so Bob, our UPS driver. For Christmas, I bought him a $100 food fight gift card.
Yep.
And then when you do that, Food Fight offers this, like you get a free $25 certificate.
I know the program well.
Okay. I don't know why I'm explaining it to you like you're not a Madison pro. But so I always do that every year. And I was like, that's a perfect thing to do for Bob, I thought. Yeah. But so then I had this $25 gift card. What I didn't realize is now their new way they do it is it expires at the end of March.
Oh, no.
Of the next year.
Oh, no.
So I don't know if you have any, but because it's not just like you get another gift card, you get like a certificate.
Oh, sure.
That says like expires
that has
March.
An expiration date.
Mm-hmm. Which is a smart idea business wise. I get why they did it because you're not just giving out free money, you're giving out free like temporary money.
During like a slow season.
During a slow season. And it's nice because then it's like, fewer people can use it or whatever. But I remembered to use it literally, what was yesterday? Like 2 days, it's almost the end of March.
Yeah.
I don't know what day it is.
Yeah. Something like that.
So my mom and I were going to Cento before we went to Mamma Mia.
How was Mamma Mia?
It was so good.
Oh,
I love Mamma Mia. My mom and I saw Mamma Mia. We were trying to figure out what year it was. We saw it in New York on Broadway. One of like the first years it was open. I think it was like when I was 18 and auditioning for school at NYU. Like musical theater school.
I didn't know you did that.
What? Yeah. I auditioned for a lot of musical theater schools. And I got into some. I did not get into NYU. They take 10 people.
Yeah. But 10. Look at you. You still auditioned.
I went anyway. I was very confident.
I love that.
You know me and my delusional confidence. It's gotten me a long way, but it did not get me into NYU. Also, that same year, Mary Kate and Ashley are the same age as me. And they took 2 of the spots. 2 of the 10 spots went to Mary Kate and Ashley at like the Tisch fancy NYU school. So anyway, I was like, I had no chance. But I went anyway, and we went to New York and we saw Mamma Mia, and it was like, it had just opened on Broadway a year or 2 before. We both love ABBA. So yeah, it was super fun. So then this is like 20 years later and we're seeing it again. It was so cute. And it's all about adorable. Like mom and daughter. And it was very cute.
Yeah.
But now we're at the point where I buy dinner when we go out because she has these tickets. So I was like, well, luckily this time
I have a gift card. Yes.
It takes a little bit of the sting off of the Cento dinner. But I love Cento. I know. It's the best. It's worth every penny.
I haven't been there in a really long time.
We'll go sometime. I have like staples that I get. If you go for happy hour, they have like $5 cocktails. Their classic cocktails are $5.
Happy hours are my favorite thing ever.
Oh, I know. We need to do a whole podcast about happy hours.
Yeah.
And you can lead the discussion.
What is their happy hour?
4 to 6 window. And it's just drink specials, but they have $10 glasses of wine and $5 signature cocktails. So they're a Negroni, and they make them like kind of minier.
Okay.
But it's like a stiff ass Negroni.
Yeah.
So basically me and my mom like pound these $5 Negronis, as many as we can before 6 o'clock. When the happy hour goes away, and then it costs like $15.
Nice.
So and they're very strong.
I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. So yeah, mom weekend, we did good.
Yeah. I actually did get a happy hour in this weekend too, because when we went to Weary Traveler, we got in before 6 p.m.
Oh, you did? And what is their happy hour special?
I think it was like $5 taps, $5 like their signature cocktails, and $5 glasses of wine.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it was also Saturday, which nobody has a happy hour on Saturday.
I know. I'm always surprised with Cento too. They do it 4 to 6 every day.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a new thing, is a lot of places do it every day, including the weekend.
I think they should at least. But then they had prime rib. So
yeah,
which was a little overdone for my taste, but I like it pretty rare.
I love
It was still good. I also had
Where'd you sit? At the bar or at a table?
at a table,
Mhm.
right? Like kitty corner to the like corner door
Oh, yeah.
with the sun coming in.
Yeah.
The lighting was so
Aw,
good.
cute.
I feel really nerdy about, but the lighting was so good.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's very like vintage feeling in there
Mhm.
when you've got that like late afternoon light.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like orange and
Yes.
dark woods
The
and
golden hour in there
Mhm,
is beautiful.
mhm.
And we got there like just the right time, which is such a Midwest thing to say. But the people who came in after us were waiting for like a half hour to get a table. We got seated right away.
Yeah, on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That's always our struggle with Cento because everybody goes before the overture shows at the same time. And my mom always wants to sit at the bar. She doesn't want to make a reservation. She refuses to make a reservation.
Really?
We have to gamble on sitting at the bar because she loves the feel
bar,
of
yeah.
sitting at the bar. And it's a beautiful bar. And there's
Yeah.
always these two great bartenders that are always there that we love. And that like take your order and everything. But so then now I have to go early all the time for her. And then I just
To get
like
the seat at the bar.
to get seats at the bar. And you still have to wait half the time. They open at 4. And by the time you get there at like 4:30,
Yeah.
full. The bar's full.
The bar's full.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every time.
Hmm.
With these overture shows. Like those
Yeah. Oh,
nights,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Happy hour.
Happy hour. So Jamie, what are you reading right now?
I finished Bride because
yeah.
I had looked at like the bestsellers list and the top 5. I hadn't read any of them. So I like picked one and went for it.
Yeah.
And I liked it a lot. I was annoyed like when I had to put it down.
Love that feeling.
Mhm.
Love that feeling.
Love that
I mean, it's an
feeling, too.
annoying feeling, but it's the
When-
one that you want.
Right. So yeah, it's like paranormal love story. There were parts of it where I was like, okay. But still loved it. It was a lot
The
of fun.
spicy parts?
Yes, there was. Because it's like a werewolf and a vampire.
Mhm.
So their anatomy isn't exactly the same.
Oh, we talking anatomy.
Yes.
Episode 1, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and there's like a term that is thrown out for the were anatomy that is just like not sexy enough for me.
I need you to say what it is out loud.
A knot.
Not like K.
Oh, when you whisper it like that, it sounds sexy.
The werewolf knot.
I'm sweating now.
Is it a knot? Did
Yeah.
they describe it?
Yeah.
Because that's.
There's like a stuck situation that happens.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to give too much
Yeah,
away.
You're right. You're right.
You're
Is it an
getting-
integral plot point?
No, not really, but it's,
Getting stuck in the knot?
makes you go,
Okay. Yeah. Things
Yeah.
that make you go,
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a funny podcast segment that
Yes.
we do. It's very 90s. It would be appropriate for our demographic.
It would. But then I also just picked up 3 Body Problem.
Oh, I started watching the show this weekend.
Did you?
I have not read the books.
Okay. We'll have to compare notes.
I know.
I'm holding off on watching the show because I want to finish the book. But
How far are you?
I'm only like 80 pages in.
Okay.
But I was reading it here in the store a little bit on Sunday. And one of my favorite things is when people come up and I've read the book that you're reading.
Totally.
And have a comment about it. And some guy was like, how are you liking it? And I'm like, it's pretty slow. And he's like, it's going to take about 150 pages. So I feel like I'm at least dedicated up until that point.
Yeah, you're putting the work in.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me because the first episode was like baffling to me. I was like, what is happening? And they did very little world building in the show. And I was like, see, and I'm more of a person, I love world building.
Yeah.
I don't care if it takes 150 pages of like, explain to me what's happening here. And then I will be more engaged with the story. And if you just throw me in with no world building.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally there's like a perfect balance.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have to lean one way or the other,
and-
I would rather lean with more world building. And like, even if it's a little slower.
Yeah.
Plot wise at the beginning. The show was like no world building because it's a show and they want to get you like into the characters. But I'm like, but I don't know what the deal is with these characters.
It seems like the book is more like panning out the dynamic of the society.
Oh, yeah. I'd be into that.
Yeah. So it's not exactly world building, but it's like what this organization is doing and what this organization is doing and how they're going up against each other. So
kind of exploring the cultural moment that you're in.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like I would like it.
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle with like the hardcore sci-fi though.
Mm-hmm. It is pretty hardcore sci-fi, but I'm in it.
All right.
I'm in it.
Good for you.
What are you reading?
I'm reading My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, something that I probably should have read a long time ago. And it's a classic. It reads beautifully. It is also a little slow in that it's a more like quiet literary story, but there's a lot of like, it's 1950s Naples, Italy. And so there are these references to, communism and like what the social structure looked like then that I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
And like the different classes that were there that I just like don't know anything about this world. So the little peeks into that you get are great. But, it's just so beautifully written. It's hard to fault it and beautifully translated as well. You can like feel the Italian. You can feel the heat of Naples too in the summer. Like she's so descriptive. The characters are really, it took me a while, I think, to differentiate them. It's like Reno and Nino and Stefano and so I was like, okay, I gotta keep track of all these Italian names. It's not supernatural to me, but now that I'm like 3/4 of the way through, I can't put it down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I have to know what's going on.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm liking that. And I'm also reading my store book right now is Eve by Kat Bohannon, which is about the history of human female biology. And it is fascinating.
Such a fascinating thing, just how women's bodies are not studied like men's were.
Exactly. And she's got this like sassy New York scientist attitude that she writes with, which I love. So it kind of like dumbs it down a little bit for people like me who are not science nerds, because it's pretty in the weeds of the science.
And you met her.
I did meet her. She was here at UW doing a book event and giving like a little lecture. So I sold books at the lecture and a lot of students came and people from the community. It was open to the public. And she was a character in person as well. It was really fun to meet her. This is one of those books where like it's slow, it's long. And I only say it's slow because it's dense more than it's slow. But I find myself thinking about it and talking about it all the time. I was at dinner with my mom and we were just talking about, how it's hard to hear each other talking. And then I started going into, because it was like loud in the bar, started going into like, okay, well, here's what Kat Bohannon said about human female hearing. And I just like went off on this tangent about it. And I'm like, man, I keep doing this about that book. It's one of those things. And we should get into this to talk about like what we look for in a book. But that is one of the things that I love about books is ones that make you want to like talk about it with people where you're like, even if when the experience of reading it can be tough or it can be challenging or sad or whatever, like if you want to talk about it with people, there's something there.
Yeah.
Like that makes them, something must be going good.
Hi, this is Angela Russell, host of the Black Oxygen podcast. So I am a Black woman that loves Wisconsin. That sounds like an oxymoron, but it is absolutely true. And I know I'm not the only Black person that loves this state. Black Oxygen podcast is all about amplifying the Black voices all throughout Wisconsin and a little bit beyond. I hope that you'll check out the podcast soon and let me know what you think. Take care. Bye.
Hi, Amy Impellizzeri, host and creator of I Know How This Book Ends podcast, and I have a confession to make. The most fun part about doing this podcast is not the celebrity VIP author guest list, although that is really fabulous. The most fun part is when I hear an author guest say, "No one has ever asked me that before." I love that. On this podcast, we're trying to ask the unsanitized questions, the questions no one's ever heard before. I'm trying to surprise the author guests and hopefully surprise the listeners too. Tune in and see if I can surprise you. I Know How This Book Ends, Season 4, available now.
Today, we'd like to talk about some of our favorite reads. And we want to do that to introduce ourselves to the listeners, a little bit of what we love so you can get to know our reading tastes. We both tried to pick a little bit very authentically of what we genuinely love to read and what we recommend to people, but also tried to think a little bit about variety.
Yeah, right. I think the thing that I thought about the most when I was picking these books are what are the books that I can't stop thinking about? Like no matter how long ago I've read them or how often I talk about them, like the books I can't stop thinking about. I'll never stop thinking about.
That's a great criteria. And I guess an extension of that is what I was thinking about is I can't stop talking about it. I can't stop telling other people about it. When I read Chain Gang All-Stars, I was insufferable. I could not stop talking about it to every single person in my life. I forced my friends and family to read it and just so I could talk about it with them. It's so good. And
I haven't read it yet.
You will be forced eventually. Don't worry.
I have it at home. It's like one of the books that's like haunting my TBR pile.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
You're doing a really good job of staying on top of stuff that I want to read. So I feel like we both have ones that we need to get caught up on so we can talk about them with each other.
Yeah.
Like I have not yet read the new Gabriel Garcia Marquez, even though I have your copy at my house.
You will consume it in a day. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm waiting.
Find the right time.
I'm waiting to finish Elena Ferrante because I think that I try to have one juicy literary thing that I'm doing at a time. I don't want to mix up the vibes.
Yep.
And maybe I'll have one literary, one nonfiction, one fantasy.
Yeah.
But I try not to do more than But yeah, so what if today we just talk about some of our 5-star reads, some things we love. And we can even just book by book. I feel like I picked things that I love them for different reasons.
Okay, I'll start with the
6
one.
books also. And
Do I?
Thought we talked about 5. I had to edit myself down to 5.
I was gonna, because you were making fun of this one. I was gonna not talk about.
All right, we gotta cut that out.
I'll tell everybody later what it was. Stay tuned to know what I'm hiding. Okay, the one that I hand sell all the time is Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. It might even be the first book that sucked me into reading so much. Follows the protagonist, Santiago, on his kind of journey to find his life's fortune. And it's really just about the people that he encounters and listening to the good omens around him and finding what treasure is really in his life. The moral of the story is really about the journey is what's important. It's not the destination.
And it's really like a fable, right? And it's almost not even it can be thought of as a metaphor and a larger, one of these, like a Scheherazade tale, it's like a tale.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how to say it any better than that,
yeah.
But it feels so mythical when that's why we put it in our myth and legend and fairy tale section.
Yeah. It definitely has
because it has
fairy
that,
tale.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I agree.
Even though it's very down to earth story in a lot of ways, it feels very mythical to me.
Yeah, but it's also a book that I can pick up once every 5-10 years, and it means something completely different to me. I gain something else from it, a different way to look at it, how my life is going and what I want out of it. And
do you remember one of the last things that you got out of it last time you read it?
I think the one thing that stuck with me last time is really about the omens. Look for the signs that you're doing the right thing. And I think that has definitely manifested itself in where I am right now. So much in my life has changed the last 5 years. And that's really just about me following what things are speaking to me.
And what felt good. We've talked about that before. I feel like in relation to that, I should talk about 100 Years of Solitude. And I feel like I feel similarly about this book as you do about The Alchemist, where I've reread it at different points in my life. It was a book that sucked me in at maybe a little bit too young of an age, where I didn't quite understand all of the depth of, war and, I still don't fully understand. And I certainly have gotten a lot out of it. Every time I've reread it, it's a reread for me. It's a familiar feeling. I think even I have at home a little cheat sheet of the first time I read it, trying to keep track of all the characters that all have very similar names. They even have a little timeline at the beginning of all their names, the different Arcadios and Aurelianos. I have my own handwritten thing from when I was in high school that I literally reuse every time I read it.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the first books of the genre magical realism, which Gabriel Garcia Marquez is really thought to be the father of magical realism as a genre, as this Colombian South American writer. And it's my favorite genre. So I feel like it was the one that caught me where I was like, oh, the magic of life, which doesn't have to be dragons and wands. It can be people living for an extra 100 years, but living the same life. Or it can be a town that kind of disappears and hides when it needs to protect itself from war. The way that you can use magic as a writer to bring your point across, it just like hooked me. You'll see basically all of my favorite books, and I try to offer some variety, but everything is something magical or fantastical. And that really, I think magical realism rides the line perfectly for me of it's still a real story that you can connect to and relate to. But then there's just this piece of magic in it that brings it alive and makes it more than regular life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of my favorite books of all time. And it is one of those rereads. I definitely hand sell it a lot to anyone who hasn't read it and is into any kind of magical realism or fantasy. Like, go back and read this.
Yeah.
And I think it can, it's not the same as like this kind of candy fantasy and romantasy that I love.
Same.
And we will talk about a lot.
No shame. Nope.
But it's not the same vibe. It is, it's deeper. It's literary. It has a lot more meaning and depth. And so you do have to kind of stick with it for a while. So, but once you do, it really is so special and amazing. And his writing is incandescent.
It is. Even the last book that we were talking about, Until August.
Yes.
Like, his writing in it. It's basically an unfinished, but it still feels finished. It still has everything there. He's such a beautiful writer.
His sentences. I mean, I feel like I could open any page in this book and read a sentence and it just like hits you different.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, good. We got some of our like historical favorites of what we have loved and thought about.
Yes. A newer one, she's a local author, Still True by Maggie Ginsberg. It's one that I just can't stop thinking of. Basically, it's about a woman who is in a relationship with her husband, but they live in separate houses. And her long lost son comes back into her life, is knocking on her door, and she has to kind of explain who he is and why he wasn't a part of her life. But simultaneously, there's another family in the picture that is struggling. They just moved to this town. The mom has struggles with alcohol. Their relationship with her husband is kind of falling apart. And she's also raising a child who's like 8 years old. The child develops a relationship with his older male figure when his father is kind of busy with work and not there for him. A tragic story, something terrible happens. And it's really a story of redemption in the end. And it has a lot of Wisconsin tropes in it. Like, alcoholism is a huge topic in Wisconsin. Drinking is what we're known for. So I think that's very beautifully written in this. And it's a hard topic to tackle. But yeah, she does a great job. And I just can't stop thinking about this book.
What pieces do you think about? What do you come back to?
Well, I think about
Certain
the way that the mom in it, the way that she tries to overcompensate for some things. And I mean, she really wants to be a good mom, but she keeps going back to drinking, and she knows that this is going to hurt her. And it's really the way that she walks through that. And the story is written kind of showing her struggle there. It's really fascinating to me.
I like that.
And as a mom, like, I was a young mom. So like, I can totally think about that as, when my friends were 20 years old and going out drinking all the time, like thinking about how is alcohol going to be a part of my life and how is it going to how am I going to be responsible about this? And when it wasn't a right thing for me to do, like always putting my kids first, like you can really see that struggle in here. So I definitely resonated with that.
Right.
Yeah. That's probably a huge thing that I just worked out right now with you.
Man, look at this. We're creating insights.
Yeah.
Even for ourselves. And I have to admit, I have not yet read this, even though I love Maggie Ginsberg personally. And she's such a great person in the community and writer. And I've read other stuff. And friend of the store. And it's on my list. It's at home. It's one of those that I'm like, I will get to it.
Yeah.
But it also, I kind of put a moratorium on sad books for a while, which is why I hadn't gotten to it sooner. But I think I'm in a really good place now and I could probably come back to it.
Yeah. And it is a happy ending. There's a
good to know. Good to know.
It's a happy ending. There's the sentiment of like the namesake of the book is really like all these things are happening, but do I still love you? Are we still here?
Right.
What is still true?
Yeah.
Like even through the madness of it.
That's a great selling point, I think.
Yeah.
Because I knew about the topics of it and I knew about some of the story elements. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
But I think knowing that it's going to have that resonance, that positive resonance at the end.
And there's a point where you're like, there's no way this is ending well. There's just no way. And it does.
But you kind of love that too then.
I do. Yes. Then, it's like.
So is it a spoiler that it ends well? It doesn't end well. It ends and you're not really giving it away.
Yeah. I don't think it's a spoiler. Oh, maybe it is. Oh, maybe it is. There are some things that don't work out. Oh, that's very true about it too.
Mm-hmm. And if it has like hope, I feel like in the end,
absolutely,
it doesn't necessarily mean any specific good thing or bad thing happened.
Yeah,
I do need to put that towards the top of my list.
Yeah.
I will also talk about a local author, Madison, Wisconsin author who I love. And this book absolutely blew me away. I was reading it on vacation, and it is not necessarily like a beach read. I was sobbing on the beach. Like I was laying there and I had to like put the hat over my head because people were walking by and like looking at me because I was like ugly crying. Like, and but in a good, it's not like because it's such a sad book. It's because I was so into these characters. And the plot is that these 4 siblings in 1969 in New York City go visit like a tarot card reader, a traveling psychic who tells them each individually the date that they are going to die.
Good Lord.
And but they don't know each other's. They don't talk about it really because it's also kind of like skeptical, like,
sure, this can't be real.
Yeah. But there are signs that it is. And they try to go back to there and she's gone. And they're like, what happened? So then it follows these siblings through their lives. And it goes in order of which ones die first. And it's basically a meditation on what would you do if you had that information? How would it change your life? Because how could it not? You know, there's one who is young and queer and moves to San Francisco and he's there in like the 80s. Now there's spoilers that are potentially coming out of my mouth, so I don't want to do it. But you see all these different decades in different cities also. So there's this like really cool historical fiction aspect of like each of them. You see like the 80s in San Francisco. You see the 90s in like Las Vegas. You know, there's like where they end up is really fascinating, and how they relate to each other and how they interpret this date that they were given. And then it also comes to them, you know, it's with them on the date, every person. And it is like, I get chills.
So they
just
like know that it's happening on this date.
Cause one of them has a super early date and it becomes true. And so I think that kind of clues them in.
And everybody thinks it's real.
But then I there's one of them that's more skeptical and others that are more believers. And what is that, how does that fuel them? And I think I really relate to it thinking about like destiny and choices and what you do with your time and however much time it is. That really relates to like another book that I have here that I'll get to, but that's something I think about all the time. And I feel like it's such an awesome exploration of that from a perspective that gives you both the positive and the negatives of that, it's just beautiful. And she's such a great writer and I can't wait to see what she's going to do next. Cause I think she's coming out with a book either end of this year or next year. She has another one coming out. And she does have other books out. Anatomy of a Dream was her first novel, I believe. But The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. We should probably be saying the title and author more.
Yeah.
At the beginning and the end. We're new to this. The Immortalists.
We'll have a list.
By Chloe Benjamin. We will have a list. LakeCityBooks.com. We can have a whole list up that includes all of these books from our first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to an oldie, but a goodie. This I love so much. I tattooed his words on my body.
Oh, yes.
The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. This takes place in 1920s France. It follows American and English expatriates after World War I. It's that lost generation. And it's kind of this love triangle. And I think what ultimately sucked me into this book was Ernest Hemingway's writing. I mean, it was like his first novel, not a short story that he's so used to. Was that the first
one?
I think so. I mean, if it's not the first, it's...
No, I think you might be right.
He just has like a certain art to saying so much with so few words.
I know. It's so succinct. His sentences are like the briefest, but then they just pack such a punch.
Yes.
Like no unnecessary words.
Yes. So yeah, I loved that about this. It's same kind of prose. It's just beautifully written. And then it also going against the norm of, feminism is a big thing and, not having that monogamous relationship and there's a love triangle. And then it's like also pretty gruesome because it's dealing with bullfighting. He has a certain magical way of like describing what's going on during these performances and that get rather gruesome. And then it's just the end line for me that I will not say.
I mean, people can look it up, I guess.
People can look up.
If they want to know what's tattooed on your body.
Yes.
Somewhere.
And that just really reflects like you never know how things are going to turn out. Like even the way that you perceive something in your life. Like, yes, it's nice to think that, but is that really how it is?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Great.
It got real deep.
I love it.
The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway.
Good recap. Way to remember to say the name. Okay, if we want to go deep, I guess I will go for 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. This is my favorite nonfiction book I've read in a really long time. I wanted to bring in some nonfiction because I
didn't do any nonfiction.
I mean, we're fiction girlies a little bit. We're trying to be authentic to who we are, but this is genuinely a book I recommend all the time. I've already read it twice. It's only been out for a few years, but it genuinely changed my life. And I've read a lot of those business books like Checklist Manifesto and Drive and things talking about, how to be efficient and how to be the best worker and manager. And that's the thing I thought about a lot in my past career as a middle manager at a large tech company. And it's something I thought about really differently as I was getting ready to open my own business, and which is something I've always wanted to do. This book, 4,000 Weeks, talks about how to use your time, not to be as efficient as possible, but to live your best life and to do the things that you actually care about and spend your time in a way that is going to be meaningful to you when you are looking back on it. Like, are you going to wish when you're 80 years old and you're looking back at your life, and 4,000 weeks is, I think, the average, that's the number if you live to be about 80 years old.
Okay.
So you might not even get 4,000 weeks, really. But he talks about, are you going to look back at your life and be like, I'm so glad I sent all those extra emails and I completed all those extra tasks on my list? Or am I going to be so happy with that memory of I have with my children on that vacation, or that I went for that big thing? Like for me, it was that I started a business, that I opened a bookstore, and I was really scared about it for, I think, fairly obvious reasons that I won't have to go into, of starting a business, of starting a bookstore. And this made me think about it in more of a like, what do you have to lose kind of a way?
Yeah.
what you're going to just keep spending, do it now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other point he makes is whatever you're thinking about doing and you're wanting to do, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
You might not even you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. And I live a lot of my life with the philosophy of I could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
It's true. You never know what's going to happen.
I mean, because you never know. And I think it's important to have fun with your life and to enjoy what you're doing and to build the life that you want to be in every day such that you don't need a vacation from it.
Yes.
And that is a thing that I have actively done. And I'm personally really proud of, and this book helped me do it. And he also talks about it, you learn so much in this book about history, about philosophy. He talks about the concept of how we have time now. Like I have an hour to do a thing. And really before the Industrial Revolution, when we had clocks that were the same, there was no, hour. There was no, we were, tied to the sun and the seasons, and we were more in tune with nature. And we were, he talks about the concept of like we were time. They wouldn't use you don't have it. Time is not a thing that you have or own or can put in a box or save or use. It's a thing that we just are. Like the way people talked about it, he goes into how language has evolved to talk about time. And I feel like that really helped shake me out of thinking about being as efficient as possible all the time or getting back to everyone all the time. And it's just I could go on and on about this book. But I recommend it to everyone, especially all of the super high achieving people in my life that are always doing the most, and God bless them and go for it. But sometimes we do the most and we burn out.
Yeah. Does that make you happy doing the most? Yeah.
Like, are you doing the most at something for the right reasons?
Yeah.
And are you doing the most for a thing that is going to bring you a lot of more macro level joy? Because like we're all going to die.
Yeah.
The bus is coming for us, and we don't know when that's going to be. So don't stress out about a job you hate. I don't know, like try to find other things. So 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. Life changing.
Yeah. Who needs another Atomic Habits? That sounds way better.
Atomic Habits is great for other reasons. I don't. Well, I know, but it's true. This is just like a really different perspective, and it was one that I needed as a person who was more on the Atomic Habits, checklist manifesto side of management. So if you already do all that stuff and you have Atomic Habits for yourself, maybe you need to think about 4,000 Weeks instead.
Love it. We'll go to another new one. Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. This came out in November-ish?
Last fall.
Maybe
September, October.
So it follows a couple different storylines. It's really, so it starts in the 1970s, and they discover a body in this well. And then it goes back 30 years. And I'm looking at Molly for
to the 30s, maybe 40 years.
Yeah, she's also read this, so she
loved it too.
Yes.
We can group
this
one. We can group this one.
So it goes back 30, 40 years, and then the character development. You meet a new person, and then you also get to know where they came from and what their family was like and how they came to America. And it's very developed in the dynamic between white people, Black people, and the Jewish community in this one area.
In small town Pennsylvania. Well, I was just going to say the character development you're talking about, it's so cool. They do these he's writing almost like a little vignette of a character, and then it adds up to being this big ensemble cast, and the action kind of is overlapping all the time and happening all the time, but then it really ramps up towards the second half of the book. So it's kind of like this, you're going deep on each character, and then you're pulling back into their perspective in this community, and then you go deep into another character. So it just was like riveting to me, because I feel like I got both things of like beautiful character development and these little insights, little windows into someone's past. No one's just like showing up for no reason. Like everybody has a purpose in the story. And then it also, the way everybody worked together and was, dealing with the issue that they're dealing with.
Yeah. The Black community and the Jewish community in particular come together to help this family and this young boy. And I think that's such an amazing part of the story. And then at the end, it comes back to who this body is and how it got there. And it's kind of just like, oh yeah, I forgot about this body. And then
it's true. It's like there's a mystery in there, but you are swept away by the story that's being told. And then towards the end, you go like, oh yeah, there's going to be a body. And when they find the well in the plot line, you're going like, oh my God, who's going to be in it?
Yeah.
And talk about beautifully written.
Yes.
I mean, James McBride. I would sit and reread things or just like close my eyes and think about some words that he had just written and that I had just read, because it is stunning and it's got such poetry to it. But then he also has really fantastic dialogue, which I feel like not a lot of books get right.
Yeah.
And his dialogue is laugh out loud funny and super specific to each character and to each culture at the time, but so believable and real and I mean,
it's a treat. It's
talk about one you think about too.
Yep, exactly. Did you ever read The Good Lord Bird?
I haven't, but I want to go read everything he's ever written.
Right?
Now. And I think Deacon King Kong was really highly recommended to me when it came out. And I never got to it. And I feel like this is really his breakout book that was both critically acclaimed and commercially. It was like the number one book.
Forever.
Yeah,
like
it was number one seller for a really long time throughout the whole Christmas season too and the holiday season.
Yeah.
So I feel like that will help him in his backlist of books to really blow up.
I want to go back for Deacon King Kong.
For sure.
Yeah, that one's been on my list. The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride.
Such a good book. I will talk about one that maybe we both have read. Have you read Circe?
I have not.
Oh.
I read Achilles.
Okay. Yep. Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Also great.
Yeah.
I would say Circe by Madeline Miller. I liked better only because I really related to this character of this crazy witch who lives forever by herself. But so, okay.
That's a little revealing.
Circe is this villainous character in Greek mythology that Madeline Miller has really written an origin story for. It's kind of like Wicked did with the green witch Elphaba. And I feel like this is Circe's not a redemption story, but it shows the why behind all the things that she did in Greek mythology. And she seems much more reasonable. So it's very like a feminist Greek retelling of giving her some power, giving her autonomy, but then also showing the context of what she was doing. So she's isolated early on to this island, this Greek island by herself. And then, different things happen. So Odysseus shows up as part of the Odyssey. And different gods visit her and she has relationships with them and all these other myths kind of tie in. And she's like kind of tangential to those myths, but then they play a part of this book. It is so engaging. And I, as a Greek mythology person who I always loved that growing up, it was like so fascinating to me. These feminist retellings that are on trend it's been a really exciting trend for me. I love all of them. This one is my favorite because Madeline Miller's writing is not just poetic, but her character of Circe is just such a fascinating look to what it is, what is good and evil and what our choices we just have to make for ourselves and how will that be remembered by others. Also, if you've not read Circe yet, what are you waiting for? It's out there. It's in paperback. You could probably find used copies. Sometimes we have used copies here at the store that come in. It is just a beautiful telling. And if you love Greek mythology, there's a lot of different myths tied into her story as well.
Okay, I will read it. Fine.
Twist my arm.
Okay, my last book is In the Distance by Hernan Diaz. He recently came out with a Pulitzer Prize winning Trust. which
I didn't know you'd read this one too.
I love this one so much.
Wow.
It haunts me. I think about it so often. But he comes over from a Scandinavian country to the United States during the gold rush. And he comes over with his brother and they make it to New York and then they get separated. And he doesn't know how to speak English and he doesn't know how to get to the boat he's supposed to be on. And he can't find his brother anywhere. So he goes onto a ship thinking, oh, I'll just see him when I get where we're meeting, where we're supposed to be. And he ends up in California, still not knowing how to speak English. And he's like, okay, well, I need to get back to New York. My brother's probably in New York. So he starts this journey across the United States and he ends up getting kind of kidnapped by this woman. She kind of uses him as a henchman for a little while. But then he escapes from that and he travels east trying to get back to New York. It's just his struggle after struggle and how he just perseveres. And then it actually resonates a lot with The Alchemist in that like the journey that you're going on is kind of putting you back where you started. And that's where you're supposed to be.
Wow. It sounds a lot like The Odyssey too.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
Where he's trying to get back home and is running into all these things and is captured by a woman.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But also Hernan Diaz, his writing is just so beautiful.
Pulitzer Prize winning.
Yes. And I would have chosen Trust too if I could have had 7 books because I also love Trust.
Did you like this one more?
I did. This is the one that I just can't stop thinking about. Like, just to put yourself in that situation where you're like trying to go to a new place to better yourself, to better your family, find your fortune, and then you're just alone. Mm-hmm. You have no way of communicating. So you get like a lot of internal dialogue from him, and it's just fascinating what he's thinking about, how he's working through his situation. A beautiful insight.
I feel like we're learning a lot about ourselves as we are going through these picks.
It's going to be an ongoing theme. Oh, man.
A journey of self-discovery.
Yes. Our own little therapy in a podcast.
That does sound really good.
It is.
Nice.
I've given this as a gift to several people in my life. And it's just like such a haunting tale.
I love it. I want to read it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to swap piles after this.
And then we'll do another podcast on what we think of each other's picks.
Oh, yeah. Giving star ratings to each other's 5 stars. Oof.
Oh, that could get ugly.
It could get ugly.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to talk about one that I think we both... Well,
I agree with you here.
Okay, good. Yeah. I was going to say, there's been like some backlash, I feel like, about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, in case anybody hasn't heard of it. I don't think I have to go into further what that book is, but I feel like lately there's been I've been hearing more hate about just in like the bookseller community. I saw this post of like a bookstore that put up a little display of books we hate.
Oh no.
And they were saying like, these are books we would never hand sell, but people buy them. And
we
I
would never do that here.
We don't. Well, I know in general, I was like, that is shaming for sure. I would be like, if you walked into that store, you would not be able to buy any of those books, which is like, what is the purpose of having them at your bookstore?
Right.
And I think they're trying to be like funny or cheeky, but I think in general, it's good to point out like, there is no shame here.
No.
At Lake City Books.
No.
Or in general, like our vibe is you should read what you want to read. And the more that we all want to read, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means reading some of those books that are kind of like candy books, as a person with a full sugar addiction,
yes,
that applies both to my reading and to my eating.
Same.
And this baby was a hot piece of chocolate cake that I could not stop eating. That is how I feel about Fourth Wing. And I feel like that's a different kind of 5-star read than 100 Years of Solitude, for example, or even Circe, or certainly 4,000 Weeks, or some of the ones you've been talking about that are much like quieter, deeper. This is not quiet.
No.
It's not deep.
No. In the best way.
But it is candy. It is so fun. You can't put it down, which a book doesn't have to be able to it doesn't have to feel like you can't put it down in order for it to be a 5-star read to me. But it helps. Because like, if I can't put you down, there is something in it that is really compelling. And I think in this, it's the plot. I love the world that Rebecca Yarros is building. And every book adds more and more, which I feel like is really smart. And where she's like expanding this world from just a war college, which is where we first learn about, to then kind of the whole continent, and you're learning more, and then you learn more about the dragons. Then you learn more about the continent outside of what the people like in the war college are defending, and they start realizing, oh, there are other civilizations and species even that we should know more about. You know, I think it's actually a really great tale, especially the second book, Iron Flame, about breaking down some boundaries and about learning about other cultures and not being kind of so isolationist.
Yeah. It sets these other civilizations as the enemy. And then you slowly realize that that's not the case. And it's very relatable in our own society.
So maybe it is kind of a deep book. I'm sorry, Rebecca Yarros. I shouldn't have said it's not deep, because I think there are lessons in every book that you read that you can take from it. But it is just, and I mean, like, okay, some of the dialogue maybe gets a little repetitive because they're kind of having the same, you know, when you're building sexual tension, I think between characters, they can kind of, she's having the same conversation, but just in like a couple times.
Yeah.
And literally they'll say the same lines later. And it means something a little different maybe the second time they say it, but it's like, okay, we could have progressed maybe beyond that. Yeah. But she does build the sexual tension really well.
Yeah, she does.
And she does make characters I really want to root for. Violet Sorrengail, the lead character, is super rootable for. Like, you just want her to do well. And she has a physical disability. Yeah, she's like small and has these like a connective tissue disorder. Where she like has a physical disability as well compared to the other like super strong physical people. So, you know, the fact that she has both a physical disability and she has, but she's super smart. Like, I don't know, what a great relatable character. Yeah. She's super, I think people didn't love some of her like gruffness. Like when she's talking to her dragon, you know, she'll be kind of sassy, and I would hear some comments about that. I'm like, this is her character, and it's part of her defense mechanism as like one of the smaller, weaker people in this. You know, she has created this tough exterior, and she is, she's going to give it to this big ass dragon. And like, I love it. I was here for it. You know, is it super realistic dialogue? Of course not.
Right.
She's talking to a dragon though. Like, I don't care if it's realistic dialogue. It's not a realistic situation. The realism is not the point.
Right.
And I do think she finds realism in a lot of the characters, but it's just fun. And I am so happy that things like this are blowing up, and that we live in this time of young people, and especially young women, starting to read more, because there is so much fun stuff to read, and we're allowed to talk about it, and we're not shaming each other. Like, oh, you know, you have to hide your romance novel with like inside of a different book or inside a newspaper or something. Like, no, read that shit on the train with the cover out. And then other people will be like, oh my God, I read that too. I love that book. And I think it's a great time to be alive as a reader.
Yes.
And as a shameless reader of romantasy and romance and cozy fantasy. Like, it's so fun.
Yeah. Fourth Wing got me back into fantasy thanks to you. It had been a minute.
That's right.
And there was a drought.
Yep.
But now it is raining.
Yeah. I mean, fantasy is like my weakness, I have to say. So it's, I force myself to read other non-fantasy books as much as possible. But I always let myself read.
Yeah.
Like every third book.
That seems like a good ratio.
Book. And then sometimes I have 3 going. So then I finish a fantasy and I can start another one.
And we have a great fantasy section.
We do. And we were the first bookstore in Madison to have a specific romantasy section.
Yes.
Because I'm obsessed.
Love it.
Oh yeah. The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Did we podcast? Was this a podcast?
I think we did. We went an hour. That's
good. Could probably edit that down quite a bit.
This is Book Pop.
Hey, Book Pop.
And that was our top 10 books we can't stop thinking about.
There are more, this was like
it was very hard
round one.
Yeah.
These are all round one reads for me. But I will say, 5-star reads are rare. And when I think about my favorite books ever, it is hard to narrow them down.
Yeah.
Over a lifetime. But when I think about 5-star reads recently,
right.
It is harder to pick them out. So
yeah. Finishing a book and being like, was that everything I needed it to be?
Exactly. Yeah. It always is like a little thought, like, how do I feel about this? What is the rating?
Yeah.
Because usually there's something that's like, well,
like a knot.
Yeah. Not a knot.
Thinking of things I can't stop thinking about.
I mean, if that's your criteria, then I think that counts as a 5-star read for you.
Oh my God. Oh, it might be on the next list. We'll talk about it. Anything else you want to sneak in here?
This has been Book Pop. All these books are for sale at lakecitybooks.com. We'll make a little list that has all of our favorites that we mentioned today, in case you're curious and are in the Madison area, because that's where you have to go to buy our books.
Buy our books. lakecitybooks.com.
lakecitybooks.com. And thank you for listening to Book Pop.
This was a Speak.Studio original, hosted by Molly Fish and Jamie Anderson. Produced by Molly Fish, Jamie Anderson, and Dalen Kilgore. Tech director, Peter Benedict. Executive producer, Matt Boatwright-Simon. Theme music by Lovick.